so we're going to take off the bell for Frontier opening bell to start Monday, the 18th of March. Hello, everyone. I am Boason, Omofaye, and my colleague, Thuletho, Zwane in South Africa is in Joburg, to be specific, is having a very hot cup of coffee early Monday morning to get her business and market week started. Hello, Thuletho.
Hello, Boason. Thank you very much. It's nice to see you again after a long week.
Yes. I hope you had a very nice weekend. But as always, I'm always interested in the markets. I spend most of my life on Market Street. So markets for me do come first at any point in time. I love the numbers, by the way. So let me walk everyone through where we finished off over the weekend. But let me start with Sunday, which was yesterday, where the Cairo stock market finished in the negative territory, roughly 1% in the red. EGX 30 was down around 31,061 points, and that's the start of the week in Cairo. But let's see how the Egyptian markets will perform today when the rest of the markets in that region and the rest of the world are reopened. Let's put that in mind. The Nigerian market finished up at 1% on Friday. The PFM was down by roughly less than 0.1%. The Nairobi stock market continued to wax very strong. That rally continued Friday. 1.78% took the NSE all-share index above the 100 reading. They have the GSE down by 0.48%. Friday, Thuletho's got a whole packed Southern African headlines for you later on the show. Keep that in mind. Let me quickly walk you through the East African corridor and see what's making the headlines this Monday. Kenya is posting about 164 billion shillings in trade surplus with the rest of Africa. That country continued to leverage its position as the biggest economy east of the continent with its neighbors and beyond. The CBK, that's the Kenya Central Bank, collected about 22 billion shillings at the weekly treasury bills auction, but the offer was about 93% undersubscribed. Starlink says it's doubling satellite internet uptake in Kenya as Zimbabwe says the door is open to get Elon Musk Starlink installed and get interconnectivity superhighway into some of Africa's economies. And finally, the Bank of Tanzania has told all the tourist hotels to get an FX license. The crunch of FX liquidity is there, so you've got to be sure you're in play and you're not playing out of the rules of engagement. We've had similar laws on FX taking place in Tunisia. Let me walk you through West Africa. What's going on in the West Coast? Nigeria's exchange rate seems to be aligning. The convergence between the official and the Bureau of Exchange rate seem to be coming into play. But of course, we've got today, the Statistics Office will unveil the new labor methodology, which has been adopted to calculate the country's unemployment figure. It's a little bit controversial. Just when it was unveiled about 3 months ago, now they're asking the media and everyone to step up and understand the new methodology. We'll have in attendance someone from the International Labour Organization. And on Thursday this week, we're going to say goodbye to Oscar Onyema, who came into the stock exchange about 13 years ago during the major transition for the Nigerian stock exchange. Now, Oscar became the CEO of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Then the transition took place to become Nigerian Exchange Group. Then he became the group CEO. Now, he's going to be pulled out, officially speaking, the floor of the exchange on Thursday. I'll be there. We'll be there to report that for you. Nigeria's inflation, I'm sure you saw that, 28-year high, 31.7% for the month of February. And Togo says it's expecting inflation to fall to 2.7% 2024 after 5.3% last year. And that was one of the smallest country west of the continent. And Coris International Bank says it's acquired that commercial bank, Banco Comercial, in Cape Verde on that island. And those are your headlines west of the continent. Let me raise the curtain on Southern Africa. So let's just waiting in the wings to walk you through that. But I've got the whole South African Reserve Bank governor getting another 5-year reinstatement or further extension of his tenure by Mr. President. Angola is looking to the Chinese and private sector funds for a refinery and to build an Air Force base, while the Angola Central Bank raised interest rate from 18% to 19%. Because of inflation. Let me allow Thuletho to come in here. Thuletho.
Yes, I think the market and South Africans expected Ramaphosa to actually extend Kganyago's term by another 5 years. The governor had earlier actually stated that he would be very interested in extending his term. But more interestingly is that the president also appointed a new deputy governor of the South African Reserve Bank. Last year, Deputy Governor Kuben Naidoo resigned from his position, and the MPC was dealing with only 4 out of 5 members. Of course, the governor brought in an advisor, and just yesterday, on Friday rather, it was announced that Dr. Mampo would be the person to replace Kuben Naidoo. So everybody's very excited about that, because the South African Reserve Bank's committee is now back to being balanced.
Very interesting. I'm sure Lesedi has walked South Africa through a very tough period.
Yes, indeed. Because when the Reserve Bank started increasing rates in 2021, that was for policy normalization. But we know what happened when the war in Ukraine started, that we saw inflation rates accelerate all over the world. South Africa's highest peak point of inflation was 7.8% in July 2022 or 2023, July 2022. That was the highest peak, and we saw it slowly come down. So now we are expecting it to be on a downward trajectory. However, the governor has warned that rates will continue to be higher for longer, because while inflation in South Africa is now below the 6% target range, the higher range of the bracket, the Reserve Bank would actually like it to be at 4.5% or anchored around 4.5% rather, or lower. So, and the governor has always talked about how he prefers to have a pointed inflation. He prefers inflation to be targeted at 3%. And as you know, we are way above that. South Africa's inflation is at 5.3% in January. And it is said that it may actually increase now in February for between 5.3% to 5.7%.
Yeah, Thuletho, I got that very big story from SARB. I understand, and it's quite interesting. But again, we're starting another week today. So walk me through, what do you think will be watched very closely, as we saw Angola Central Bank raise interest rates on Friday? What else is on your calendar for the week?
Angola publishes inflation numbers on Wednesday, as you say. The inflation rate accelerated for a 10th straight month to 24.07% in February, up from 21.99% the previous month. Inflation has been increasing in Angola since mid-2023 due to the weakness in Kwanzaa and the removal of fuel subsidies early in June. So that was a very big issue. In South Africa, last week, so I'll just walk you through the whole Southern Africa market. In South Africa last week, South Africa published its industrial production numbers in January and we saw mining production numbers were quite low. They're coming in, or dropping rather, to 3.3% year on year. Manufacturing fared slightly better, increasing to 2.6%, but the numbers are still quite bad, as reflected in the GDP numbers released last week. The country's industrial sectors have been struggling from, a number of challenges, including currency fluctuations, high inflation, power blackouts, and logistical problems in exporting minerals because of deteriorating rails and, port infrastructure. So for South Africa, it was the news were a bit mixed last week.
Yeah, interesting.
And then I can move on to Botswana.
Yes, I'm sure Botswana's CPI was also on your plate.
Yes, Botswana CPI, the headline inflation was unchanged at 3.9%. But interestingly, the month-on-month inflation numbers increased by 0.1% month-on-month. Fuel prices cuts, continued to support the decline in transport costs. But, the Bank of Botswana's MPC projects average inflation to fall to 4% in 2024. It was 5.1% in 2023, and they projected to fall to be at 5% for 2025. And then more interesting, Boason, as you mentioned earlier, that the Bank of Angola raised its repurchase rate by 100 basis points to 19% at its meeting. They had a meeting last week on March 15. This was the highest level of, since December 2022, after keeping inflation steady at 18%, As mentioned earlier, the causes for this is because inflation did go up because of the weaker kwanza and the issues that the country has around removing fuel subsidies. So that's basically the roundup of what happened last week.
Great. I'm sure this week is very busy, Thuletho, for central banks around the world. We have the US Fed this week. We've got the BOJ, the Bank of Japan, where that is going to raise rates. Stop is ultra low, zero interest rate. You have the ECB. We've got the Bank of England. So I'm sure for Africa, it's going to be something we're watching very closely. So how do you think this will play into Southern African week when you look at your calendar for the coming week? We're starting today.
So this coming week, as you correctly say, that the Fed is all the banks are meeting this week and they'll be being monitored very close. In South Africa as well, what will be in focus this week will be price trends. Ahead of the South African Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee sitting next week. The outcome coming out next week will be a day earlier. Usually the announcement is made on Thursday, but because of the holidays, the rate announcement will be made on Wednesday next week. So data to look out for before the MPC sitting is South Africa's the Bureau of Economic Research and Independent Research Center, NGO, which was commissioned by the South African Reserve Bank to actually measure inflation expectations, because as we know, inflation expectations in the countries drive inflation. So the BER will be releasing the inflation expectation survey for Q1 tomorrow on Tuesday. South Africa will also publish its consumer price inflation for February and January, and for February on Wednesday. They will also publish the retail sales on Wednesday. So in terms of South Africa and what to expect this coming week, today it's Monday, the BER will publish the country's retail survey as well for the first quarter. We know that consumers and retailers have been under immense pressure because of the higher borrowing costs. What is also happening this week is that the Bank of Mauritius will announce its interest rates decision today. Economists still expect the Bank of Mauritius to start easing its interest rates cycle in the first quarter, So we are looking out for that today. Headline inflation in Mauritius accelerated by 1 percentage point to 6.2% last week in February. So this is what's interesting that will be coming out today. The country will also publish its balance of trade accounts, and on Thursday they will publish their industrial production numbers. So that's pretty much what's happening today in Southern Africa, the short of it.
Quite a whole lot there, and I'm sure there's a whole lot to digest this week. So I need to get my own, something of a bigger mug of coffee that like you one you have just on your side table, just to digest and drink down all the data that we have from Mauritius to SA to Angola this week. Thank you so much, Thuletho. Let me quickly, I've got a whole lot to digest this week. Again, we're coming to the end of the month and the end of the first quarter of the year, by the way. So everyone understands that's going to be very, very busy on the economic front as we see a bit of an end to some of the quarterly and full year earnings. But we're still getting a bit of this across various markets on the continent. So everyone get prepared. Thank you. Got a whole lot on your table, Thuletho, this Monday morning. EU, let's talk about North Africa is putting together roughly $15 billion in package to support Egypt after the country devalued its currencies, floated the currency, and of course, decided to weigh in on the relationship with the IMF, which could be up to $8 billion US. That's the story. Saudi Arabia, the UAE is weighing in on the biggest economy north of the continent to get President al-Sisi and his team that much needed fiscal support to keep the country going. Fitch says Egypt, however, must prove that its current reforms are lasting before another rating action is on the table. Chevron, in the oil and gas, is expanding its nat gas extraction in Egypt's Mediterranean region. That will be about another $60 million put into that. Tunisia says it's posted about $280 million surplus in food trade balance for the month behind us. That's the month of February, while the cabinet in Tunisia says they've approved the new draft FX laws that President Said is putting on the table to ensure that the country, everyone behave themselves as far as the FX market is concerned. Those are your headlines north of the continent. Let's get the trading day Monday started. Thuletho, have a great day. It's good to have you on the show, as always, commenting across Africa and the home country, Southern Africa. Thank you very much, and have a great week, everyone.